Her tiny fingers gripped my sleeve with desperate strength as the officer's shadow fell across our faces. "Please," she whispered, "don't let them take me too. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications." The rain fell, in sheets that Tuesday night, turning the streets of downtown Millridge into a maze of puddles and shadows. I'd been working the night shift for 8 years, but something about this particular evening felt different. The air was heavy with something I couldn't quite name, foreboding maybe, or fate. My name is Officer James Mercer, and after 15 years on the force, I thought I'd seen everything. The kind of everything that makes you keep a bottle in your desk drawer and sometimes stare at the ceiling at night, wondering why people do the things they do to each other, to children. The call came in at 11:37 p.m. Neighbors reporting strange noises from the old Harmon building on 8th Street, an abandoned apartment complex scheduled for demolition next month. Probably just teenagers looking for trouble, or homeless folks seeking shelter from the storm. Standard procedure, nothing I hadn't handled 100 times before. "Dispatch to Unit 17, the radio crackled. "Can you respond to a disturbance at 1458 8th Street? Caller reports possible break-in, sounds of children crying." I acknowledged the call and turned my cruiser toward the east side of town. The windshield wipers worked overtime against the downpour, and lightning occasionally illuminated the empty streets. Most of Millridge was asleep, unaware of the lives being irrevocably changed just miles away. The Harmon building loomed like a decaying giant against the night sky. 6 stories of broken windows and graffiti-covered walls, a monument to urban decay and forgotten promises of renewal. The city had condemned it years ago, but budget constraints kept delaying its demolition. Now it stood as a shell, housing only ghosts and desperate souls with nowhere else to go. I parked across the street and called in my position. "Unit 17 on scene at 1458 8th Street, investigating possible break-in. The building's entrance had been boarded up with plywood, but someone had pried one section loose, creating a narrow gap, just big enough for a person to squeeze through." I clicked on my flashlight and drew my weapon, standard procedure when entering an unsecured location. "Police officer," I called out, my voice echoing through the empty lobby. Water dripped from the ceiling, creating a rhythmic percussion against the cracked tile floor. "Anyone here? This is the police." Silence answered me. Then, almost imperceptibly, a sound, the faintest whisper of movement from somewhere upstairs. I made my way to the stairwell, testing each step before committing my weight. The building wasn't just abandoned, it was dangerous. Rotting floors, exposed wiring, structural damage from years of neglect. My flashlight beam caught reflections in puddles of standing water and illuminated peeling wallpaper that hung like dead skin from the walls. On the 3rd floor, I heard it again. Clearer this time. A child's sob, quickly muffled. "Police officer." I called again, softer now. "I'm here to help, you're not in trouble." I followed the sound down a hallway of apartment doors, some hanging open on broken hinges, others sealed shut by swollen wood and rust. At the end of the corridor, apartment 3F stood with its door slightly ajar. I approached cautiously, using my flashlight to peer through the gap. The beam caught movement, a small shadow darting behind what looked like an overturned sofa. "Hey there," I said, pushing the door open wider. "It's okay, I'm a police officer. My name is James." The apartment was nearly empty except for debris and abandoned furniture too worthless to steal. Rain leaked through the ceiling in 3 different places, forming small pools on the warped hardwood floor. Behind the sofa, I could hear rapid, frightened breathing. I holstered my weapon and crouched down, keeping my movements slow. "I just want to make sure you're okay. Are you hurt?" A long silence followed. Then a small voice asked, "Are you going to take us away?" "I'm just here to help," I answered honestly. "Can I see you? Can we talk?" Slowly, a face appeared from behind the sofa. A girl, maybe 9 or 10 years old, with tangled dark hair and eyes that had seen too much for her age. Her face was smudged with dirt and what might have been dried tears. She wore a faded blue sweater several sizes too big, its sleeves rolled up multiple times. "There's just me and Emma," she said, her voice barely audible over the rain. "Our mom said she'd come back, but that was 3 days ago." "Where's Emma now?" I asked, my heart already sinking. The girl disappeared briefly behind the sofa, then emerged again, this time pulling a smaller child by the hand. Emma couldn't have been more than 4 years old, with the same dark hair as her sister but twisted into matted pigtails. She clutched a filthy stuffed rabbit missing one ear. "I'm Lily," the older girl said. "I've been taking care of Emma. I found food. We're okay." But they weren't okay. Even in the dim light, I could see how thin they were, how their clothes hung from their small frames. Lily had the watchful, wary look of a child forced to become an adult too soon. Emma leaned against her sister, thumb in mouth, eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. "When did you last eat, Lily?" I asked. She shrugged. "Yesterday, I think. I gave most of it to Emma." I reached slowly into my pocket and pulled out a granola bar I kept for long shifts. "Would you like this?" Lily looked at it longingly but didn't move. "Can we share it?" "Of course." I handed it to her, watching as she carefully broke it in half, giving the larger portion to her sister before taking a small bite herself. "Lily, I need to call this in, okay? Get you both somewhere warm and safe tonight." Panic flashed across her face. "No, please. They'll separate us. That's what happened to Janie and her brother. They took them to different places and they never saw each other again. Janie, our friend from the park, her mom didn't come back either." I took a deep breath. Every instinct told me these children needed immediate medical attention. Food, clean clothes. The protocol was clear. Call Child Protective Services. Let them handle placement. But I'd been in this job long enough to know that Lily's fears weren't unfounded. The system was overloaded, foster homes limited. Siblings, especially of different ages, often got separated. "Lily, I have to make a call, but I promise I'll do everything I can to keep you and Emma together. Can you trust me?" She studied my face with an intensity no child should possess. "Everybody says that. Then they do what they want anyway." Her words hit me like a physical blow. How many adults had failed these children? How many promises had been broken? "I'm not everybody," I told her. "My name is Officer James Mercer. Remember that name. If anyone ever tries to separate you from Emma, you tell them to call me." I radioed dispatch, requesting medical assistance, and CPS, but emphasizing that these were siblings who needed to remain together. While we waited, I learned more of their story. Their mother, Jessica Turner, had struggled with addiction for years. She would disappear for days, sometimes weeks, leaving Lily to care for her younger sister. They'd been evicted from their apartment a month ago, and Jessica had brought them to the abandoned building as a temporary solution. She said it was just until she got her check, Lily explained, her voice flat with the resignation of a child who's heard too many broken promises. She took her medicine and fell asleep. When she woke up, she said she needed to get more medicine. She promised she'd bring back food. That was 3 days ago. Lily had been surviving on what little food remained in their backpack and water from the building's still-functioning bathroom tap. She'd kept Emma clean as best she could, read to her from an old magazine she'd found, and told her stories to distract her from their hunger and fear. The paramedics arrived first, followed by a harried-looking CPS worker named Ms. Tanner. I pulled her aside while the medical team examined the girls. "These two need to stay together," I said firmly. "They've been through enough trauma already." Ms. Tanner sighed, already flipping through paperwork. "Officer Mercer, you know I can't make those guarantees. We'll try our best, but not good enough," I interrupted. "Find a way. There are procedures, limitations. Emergency placements are especially difficult, and with the age gap, find a way," I repeated, my voice leaving no room for argument. While the paramedics finished their examination, I crouched beside Lily again. "You and Emma are going to go to the hospital first, just to make sure you're healthy. Then Ms. Tanner will find you a place to stay tonight." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Together?" "Together," I confirmed. "And I'll check on you tomorrow. That's a promise." As the paramedics prepared to transport the girls, Lily suddenly grabbed Emma's stuffed rabbit from where it had fallen and clutched it to her chest. That's when Emma began to panic. "Bunny! My bunny!" she cried, reaching desperately for the toy. "It's okay, Emma," Lily soothed, handing the rabbit back. "Bunny's coming too." But as they started to lead the children away, Emma's tiny hand shot out and grabbed my uniform sleeve with surprising strength. "Please don't take my sister," she whispered, her first full sentence since we'd found them. Her eyes, wide with terror, looked up into mine. "Please." Something broke inside me at that moment. I knelt down to her level, taking in her face, and suddenly froze. Those eyes, that small cleft in her chin, the way her left eyebrow arched slightly higher than the right. I knew those features. I'd seen them every day for 5 years in photographs on my desk, in the locket my wife wore around her neck, in my dreams. Emma looked exactly like my daughter would have at her age. My daughter, Sophia, who'd never reached her 5th birthday, who'd been taken by a rare form of leukemia that moved through her small body with brutal efficiency, leaving my wife and me shattered in its wake. Our marriage hadn't survived the grief. Nothing had. "Officer Mercer?" "Ms. Tanner was looking at me strangely. "Are you all right?" I blinked, trying to clear my vision. It wasn't possible. It was just my mind playing tricks, seeing connections that weren't there because I needed to find meaning in this moment. "I'm fine," I managed to say, though I felt anything but. "Just give me a minute with them." I turned back to Emma, who was still clutching my sleeve. "I promise you won't be separated from Lily. Do you understand?" "I promise." Emma nodded solemnly, then allowed herself to be lifted by the paramedic. As they carried her away, she kept her eyes fixed on me over the paramedic's shoulder, as if memorizing my face, holding me to my word. I followed the ambulance to St. Mary's Hospital, calling my sergeant on the way to explain that I needed to see this case through. The girls were treated for mild dehydration and malnutrition, but were otherwise in remarkably good health, testament to Lily's resourcefulness and care. I waited while they were examined, cleaned up, and given hospital gowns and socks. When I was finally allowed to see them again, they were sitting together on one bed, Emma fast asleep with her head in Lily's lap, while the older girl stroked her hair. "Officer Mercer," Lily said when she saw me, relief evident in her voice. "You came back. I told you I would." I sat in the chair beside the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Better." They gave us food. She hesitated, then asked the question that was clearly weighing on her mind. "Did you find our mom?" I shook my head. "Not yet. We're looking for her." "She's sick," Lily said softly. "She doesn't mean to leave us. She just can't help it sometimes." The wisdom and forgiveness in her words stunned me. This child, who had every right to be angry, was instead making excuses for the parent who had abandoned her. "Lily, I need to ask you something. Important," I said carefully. "Do you have any other family, grandparents, aunts, uncles? Anyone who might take care of you and Emma while we look for your mom?" She shook her head. "Mom said her parents are dead, and our dad left before Emma was born. Mom said he didn't want kids anyway." Ms. Tanner entered the room then, her expression grim. "Officer Mercer, may I speak with you?" In the hallway, she confirmed what I'd feared. "There are no emergency foster placements available that can take both girls tonight. The best I can do is place Emma with the Harrises. They have experience with younger children, and Lily with a group home until something more permanent opens up." "That's unacceptable," I said, keeping my voice low but firm. "Those girls have been through enough trauma. Separating them now would be cruel and unnecessary." "I don't disagree," Ms. Tanner replied, frustration evident in her voice. "But I can't create beds where they don't exist. Unless you have a better solution." I did have a solution. It had been forming in the back of my mind since the moment Emma grabbed my sleeve, since I looked into her eyes and saw a ghost of what might have been. "I'll take them," I heard myself say. "Both of them. Tonight." Ms. Tanner looked startled. "You? But you're not a certified foster parent." I'm a police officer with 15 years of service and no criminal record. I have a 3-bedroom house that's been empty and quiet for far too long. And I'm telling you right now that I'm not letting those girls be separated. It's not that simple. Make it that simple, I interrupted. Grant me emergency temporary custody. You can inspect my home, run whatever checks you need to. But do it while those girls are together, safe and sleeping in warm beds. She studied me for a long moment. This is highly irregular. So is finding 2 abandoned children in a condemned building. These are exceptional circumstances. After what felt like an eternity, she nodded. I'll make some calls. But this would be temporary, just until we can find a proper foster placement for both. Them. Understood. 2 hours, countless forms, and several phone calls later, I was granted emergency temporary guardianship of Lily and Emma Turner for a period not to exceed 30 days. By then, either their mother would be located, or a more permanent solution would be found. When I told Lily the news, she looked at me with such hope that it physically hurt. Really? We can stay with you, both of us? Both of you, I confirmed. My house isn't fancy, but it's warm and dry, and there's plenty of food. For the first time since I'd met her, Lily smiled, a real smile that transformed her face and reminded me that beneath the protective older sister was still a child. We left the hospital just as dawn was breaking over Millridge. Emma, still half asleep, clung to Lily as I carried them both to my car. My house was on the other side of town, a modest 3-bedroom ranch-style home that had once been filled with laughter and love and plans for the future. Now, it was just a place where I slept between shifts, surrounded by memories and silence. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw my home through new eyes, the peeling paint on the shutters, the overgrown lawn, the empty flower beds my wife had once tended with such care. It wasn't much, but for the next 30 days it would be a sanctuary for 2 children who had nowhere else to go. Inside, I showed them to what had once been our guest room. 2 twin beds with fresh linens stood against opposite walls, and a small desk sat beneath the window. I'd cleared out most of the personal items years ago, leaving the room neutral and ready for visitors who never came. This will be your room, I told them. The bathroom is right across the hall. I'll be just down there if you need anything. Lily looked around the room with wide eyes. We get beds? The question, so simple yet so heartbreaking, reminded me of how little they'd had. Yes, you each get your own bed. Unless you'd prefer to share, Emma answered by climbing onto one bed and patting the space beside her, looking at Lily expectantly. I think we'll share for now, Lily said, joining her sister. If that's okay. Whatever makes you comfortable, I assured them. Are you hungry? I can make breakfast. I ended up making pancakes, misshapen and slightly overcooked, but the girls devoured them as if they were gourmet cuisine. As I watched them eat, I felt something shift inside me, like pieces of a puzzle finally falling into place. For the first time in 5 years, my house felt like a home again. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. I took emergency leave from work to help the girls settle in. We went shopping for clothes, toiletries, and a few toys. Emma clung to her one-eared rabbit, which I learned was named Mr. Hoppy, but she agreed to let me wash him while she picked out a new friend, a soft gray elephant she immediately named Ellie. Lily was more reserved, carefully selecting practical items and constantly checking prices, until I gently explained that she didn't need to worry about the cost. Even then, she chose modestly, as if afraid to ask for too much. We established routines: breakfast together each morning, reading time before bed. Lily helped with simple chores while Emma colored pictures that soon covered my refrigerator door. They both slept in the same bed each night, despite having 2 available, Lily's arm always protectively around her younger sister. Ms. Tanner visited regularly, bringing updates on the search for Jessica Turner. The news wasn't good. Jessica had been seen at a known drug house the day after leaving her daughters, but no one had seen her since. Her addiction had apparently worsened, and the few acquaintances willing to talk said she'd been mixing dangerous substances. 1 week turned into 2. The girls began to relax, to trust that food would always be available, that they could sleep through the night without fear. Emma's nightmares became less frequent. Lily sometimes forgot to check the locks on the doors and windows before bed, and I found myself falling into a role I thought had been forever denied to me. Father. It wasn't a conscious decision. It happened in small moments, teaching Lily how to make scrambled eggs, chasing Emma around the backyard as she shrieked with laughter, bandaging Lily's knee when she fell while learning to ride the bicycle I'd unearthed from the garage. On day 17 of our temporary arrangement, I received the call I'd been both expecting and dreading. They'd found Jessica Turner. She'd overdosed in an abandoned warehouse just outside the city limits. She'd been dead for at least a week, I asked Ms. Tanner to let me tell the girls myself. That evening after dinner, I sat them down in the living room. I need to talk to you about your mom, I began gently. Lily's face immediately closed off, as if preparing for yet another disappointment. Emma, sensing the shift in mood, crawled into her sister's lap. Did she leave again? Lily asked, her voice flat. Lily, Emma, your mom isn't coming back, I said, choosing my words carefully. She was very sick and her body couldn't fight anymore. She died last week. Emma looked confused, but Lily understood immediately. Her face crumpled, tears filling her eyes. She really wasn't going to come back this time, she whispered. I moved to sit beside them on the couch, putting my arm around Lily's shaking shoulders. I'm so sorry. She loved you both very much. How do you know? Lily demanded, anger flashing through her grief. You didn't even know her. Because she gave you each other, I said simply. And she tried in her own way. Addiction is a terrible disease that makes it impossible to be the person you want to be. Lily buried her face against my chest and finally allowed herself to cry. Not the controlled, quiet tears she'd sometimes shed when she thought no one was watching, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook her small frame. Emma began crying too, more in response to her sister's distress than from true understanding of what had happened. I held them both, rocking gently, letting them grieve for the mother they'd lost long before she actually died. Later that night, after they'd finally fallen asleep, both in my bed this time, unwilling to be apart from me, Ms. Tanner called with an update. We've located a foster family willing to take both girls, she said. The Moraleses. They have a good track record with trauma cases, and they have space for 2 children. We can transfer the girls next Monday. I looked at the calendar on my kitchen wall. Monday would be day 25 of my 30-day temporary guardianship. On paper, this was good news. A stable home for 2 orphan sisters who would get to stay together. So why did it feel like someone was tearing my heart out? James, Ms. Tanner prompted when I didn't respond. This is what we wanted, right? The girls together? Yes, I managed to say. Of course. After hanging up, I stood in the doorway of my bedroom, watching the girls sleep. Emma had her thumb. In her mouth, Mr. Hoppy clutched tightly against her chest. Lily's arm was protectively draped across her sister, even in sleep. In just 17 days, they had become my world. The house that had been silent for so long now echoed with their voices, their laughter, even their arguments. The refrigerator was covered in Emma's drawings. Lily's books were stacked neatly beside the living room sofa. Their toothbrushes stood in the bathroom cup next to mine. I couldn't let them go. Not now. Not ever. The next morning, I called Ms. Tanner back. I want to apply to be their permanent foster parent, I told her, with the intention to adopt. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. James, are you sure? This isn't just a reaction to finding them or to Jessica's death. Raising 2 traumatized children as a single parent. It's not going to be easy. I've never been more certain of anything in my life, I replied. And nothing worthwhile is ever easy. The process wasn't simple. There were home studies, background checks, interviews, parenting classes, and endless paperwork. The Moraleses graciously stepped aside when they learned of my intentions, recognizing the bond that had already formed between me and the girls. 6 months later, I stood in a courtroom beside Lily and Emma, now legally Turner Mercer as the judge made it official. They were mine and I was theirs. Forever. That was 5 years ago. Today, Lily is 14, a straight-A student with dreams of becoming a doctor. Emma is 9, artistic and joyful, with no memory of the condemned building where I found them, though she still sleeps with Mr. Hoppy, now expertly repaired and sporting 2 good ears. And me? I'm a police officer who still works the night shift, but now I have 2 reasons to come home safely each morning. 2 reasons to keep fighting, to keep believing that even in the darkest moments light can break through. Sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, I think about that rainy evening and the call that changed everything. I think about the moment Emma grabbed my sleeve and I looked into her eyes, seeing a ghost of what might have been, that instead became what is. It wasn't coincidence that brought us together. It wasn't luck or chance or fate. It was Lily's fierce protection of her sister. It was Emma's trust in a stranger with a badge. It was my promise not to let them be separated. It was love, finding its way home at last. This has been an unbreakable tale of hope emerging from the darkest corners. Sometimes family isn't what we're born into. It's what we build from the broken pieces life hands us. Remember that the most powerful light often comes after the deepest darkness. Until next time, stay unbreakable.